At a family dinner, she declared, "My ex will always be part of my life. If you don't like that, don't marry me." Everyone stared at me. I just said, "Okay." By the next week, invitations were canceled and she realized the marriage was too. It all came to a head at a Sunday dinner. One of those tense pre-wedding family gatherings where two tribes who have nothing in common are forced to pretend they're about to be joined for life. My parents, a quiet traditional couple who have been married for 40 years, were on one side of the table. On the other side were my fiancée, Clara's parents. A pair of retired therapists who spoke in a language of pop psychology and believed every boundary was a suggestion. And in the middle of it all was Leo. Leo was Clara's ex-boyfriend. But to hear her and her family tell it, he was more like a spiritual brother, an essential part of her personal ecosystem. He was at every holiday, every birthday, every dinner. He had a key to her parents' house. He was the constant smug ghost at the feast of our relationship. I'd made my feelings about him clear from the beginning. I'm not a jealous man, but I believe in boundaries. I believe a past relationship should be in the past, not sitting at your dinner table making inside jokes with your future wife. My objections were always met with the same condescending lecture from Clara and her parents about my possessive masculine tendencies and my inability to embrace a more fluid, modern concept of family. They treated my traditional values like a charming but ultimately primitive character flaw. I went along with it, not because I was a simp, but because I was playing the long game. I wanted to see how far she would push it. I needed to know if the foundation we were building on was solid rock or just sand. The topic of the wedding seating chart came up over dessert. My mother, a woman who speaks her mind with a quiet but firm dignity, had a simple question. "Clara, dear," she began looking at the draft of the chart. "I see you have Leo seated at the main family table next to your aunt. I was just wondering if that was the best place for him. Perhaps one of the friends' tables would be more appropriate." The air in the room instantly went from chilly to arctic. Clara's mother put her fork down with a clatter. Clara herself flushed a deep, angry red. "My mother is just concerned about optics, Clara," I said, stepping in before she could explode. "Having your ex-boyfriend at the family table might send a confusing message to our guests." Clara turned on me, her eyes flashing. "A confusing message? The only confusing message here is that you and your parents are still living in the 1950s. Leo is my best friend. He is family. He was a part of my life long before you were, and he will be a part of my life long after. Well, he will always be a part of my life." Her father chimed in then, his voice dripping with condescension. "Ben, we've talked about this. Your rigid definitions of relationships are what cause insecurity. Clara and Leo have a beautiful evolved connection. You should be celebrating that, not trying to control it." It was a perfectly executed 2-on-1 attack with her mother nodding in solemn agreement. They had been practicing this kind of psychological maneuvering for years. But this time, it was different. This time, my parents were there watching this woman and her family treat me and our impending marriage with such casual, arrogant disrespect. Clara Ara, feeling emboldened by her parents' support, decided to press her advantage. She stood up, her hands on her hips, and delivered the line that would bring the entire parade to a crashing halt. She looked from my mother to me, her voice loud and clear for the entire room to hear. "Let me make this perfectly clear for everyone. My ex will always be a part of my life. He will be at our wedding. He will be at our children's baptisms. He will be at our holidays. That is a non-negotiable fact. If you don't like that, then don't marry me." The ultimatum hung in the silent room. It was a declaration of war. Everyone stared at me, waiting for my reaction. They expected me to argue, to plead, to back down, as I had done so many times before, just to keep the peace. Clara had a smug, triumphant look on her face. She thought she had me trapped. I didn't say a word for a full minute. I looked at her, standing there in all her defiant arrogance. I looked at her enabling parents nodding in approval. I looked at my own parents, their faces a mixture of shock and quiet dignity. And then I looked back at her. The long game was over. She had just shown me the final stress test results, and the structure was condemned. I gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Okay," I said. The word was so quiet, so devoid of emotion that it seemed to confuse her. Okay, she repeated, her tone mocking. Okay, you'll behave. Okay, you'll stop being a jealous child. No, I said, standing up from the table. I folded my napkin and placed it on my plate. Okay, I won't marry you. I turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, we're leaving. And without another look at Clara or her stunned, speechless family, the three of us walked out of the house and out of their lives. Update 1. The drive home with my parents was silent for the first 10 minutes. My father just drove, his eyes fixed on the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel. My mother stared out the window. I think they were waiting for me to break down to show some sign of regret or heartbreak, but I felt nothing but a profound, almost surreal sense of peace. The weight of a 5-year parade had just been lifted from my shoulders. Finally, my dad spoke, his voice low and steady. Are you sure about this, son? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I said. My mother turned around from the passenger seat. There were no tears in her eyes, just a quiet, fierce pride. Good, she said. She was not the one for you. We were just waiting for you to see it. When I got back to my own house, the house I had bought, the one Clara had been living in for the past 2 years, my phone was a war zone. Dozens of missed calls, a flood of texts from Clara, her parents, her friends, even from Leo himself. They ranged from furious to confused to pleading. Clara, what was that? You just walked out? You can't be serious. Claire's mom, Ben, you have deeply hurt our daughter. You need to come back and apologize immediately. Leo, dude, what the hell is your problem? You're blowing this way out of proportion. They were all operating under the same delusion that this was a tantrum, a momentary fit of pique that could be smoothed over with a few condescending lectures and a non-apology. They hadn't yet grasped the finality of the word, okay. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I made a single phone call. It was to our wedding planner, a woman named Cynthia, who was a consummate professional. Cynthia, I said, it's Ben. There's been a change of plans. The wedding is off permanently. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. What, Ben? The invitations are scheduled to be mailed out tomorrow morning. I need you to stop that immediately, I said. Do not send out a single invitation. As for the rest of it, I need you to begin the cancellation process for all vendors. My fiancée and her family will be your point of contact for all financial matters moving forward. They were handling the payments, so they will need to handle the refunds and the cancellation fees. This was a crucial part of my strategy. I hadn't paid for the wedding. Her father had a fact he had made sure everyone was aware of. Now, the financial burden of unwinding a massive 6F-figure event was his problem, not mine. The next morning, the real shockwave hit. Cynthia, doing her job with ruthless efficiency, began making the calls. The first one, of course, Wasto, Clara's parents. I would have paid $1,000 to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. The caterer, the florist, the band, the venue. Each call was another nail in the coffin of their grand social event. Another massive, non-refundable deposit lost. Clara's father called me, his voice a strangled roar. What have you done? Do you know how much money we are losing? You can't just do this. I didn't do anything, I said, my voice calm. I just accepted your daughter's terms. She gave me an ultimatum. Accept her ex-boyfriend as a permanent fixture in our marriage or don't marry her. I chose the latter. I respected her boundary. The consequences of that choice are now yours to manage. He started sputtering about lawyers and lawsuits and breach of promise. Breach of promise? I laughed, a cold, empty sound. You were there, Richard. You heard her. You have a dozen witnesses who heard her deliver an ultimatum at a family dinner. She made the continuation of our marriage conditional, and I simply declined the conditions. There is no lawsuit. There is only the bill for a party you are no longer hosting. I hung up. The next person to appear was Clara herself. She showed up at my house that afternoon using her key to let herself in. She found me in the living room surrounded by empty boxes. I was packing her things. What are you doing? She shrieked, her face a mask of disbelief. I'm helping you move, I said, not even looking up. You're going to need to find a new place to live. You can't kick me out. I live here. No, Clara, I said, finally standing up to face her. You've been staying here. This is my house. My name is on the deed, and your invitation has been revoked. I'll be changing the locks tomorrow. I suggest you arrange for your parents to come and pick up your belongings." She finally broke down, the arrogant, confident facade crumbling to reveal the terrified, entitled child underneath. She cried. She begged. She pleaded. She said she didn't mean it, that it was just a stupid thing to say that she loved me. I just stood there unmoved. "The time for that, Clara, was when my mother was at your dinner table being treated with disrespect. The time for that was before you made your ex-boyfriend a condition of our marriage. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." Update 2. The 30 days that followed were a slow, brutal education for Clara in the concept of consequences. She and her family had lived their entire lives in a soft, padded world of second chances and consequence-free choices. A world cushioned by their money and their shared delusion of intellectual superiority. That world was now gone. The first lesson was financial. Her father, after a week of threats and bluster, finally realized I was not going to contribute a single cent to the financial disaster of the canceled wedding. The final bill for the lost deposits and cancellation fees, I heard, was close to $100,000. It was a staggering blow even for them. The second lesson was social. They tried to spin the narrative, of course. They told their friends that I was emotionally unstable, that I had a breakdown, and called off the wedding for no reason. But the story was too good, too juicy. A dozen people had been at that dinner. The story of Clara's ultimatum and my quiet final acceptance spread like wildfire through their social circle. She wasn't the victim. She was the arrogant fiancé who had overplayed her hand and lost everything. Clara Ara, after being forced to move out of my house, had to move back in with her parents. The atmosphere in that house, I was told, was toxic. Her parents, facing a massive financial loss and a public humiliation, resented her. They were constantly fighting. The thin veneer of their evolved family dynamic stripped away to reveal the bitter, dysfunctional reality underneath. Leo, the ex-boyfriend, the man who was so essential to her life, proved to be less than useless in a real crisis. He was a fun accessory for a woman who had a stable, successful fiancé. He was not interested in being the support system for a broke, unemployed, and emotionally volatile single woman. He slowly, quietly began to distance himself. The constant calls and texts stopped. He was busy. He had other plans. He was, in the end, just another fair-weather friend. While her world was burning down, I was quietly rebuilding mine. I took a 2-week trip to Europe, a trip I had always wanted to take but had put off because Clara had no interest in it. I came back feeling refreshed and clear-headed. I focused on my work, landing the biggest project of my career. I reconnected with friends who had drifted away. Friends who had never liked the person I became when I was with Clara. I didn't date. I wasn't interested. I was enjoying the peace, the quiet, the freedom of a life that was entirely my own. A life where I didn't have to constantly navigate the emotional minefield of another person's insecurities. The final and most satisfying lesson for Clara Ara came about 6 months after our breakup. A major architectural journal published a feature on a historic theater I had spent the last 2 years restoring. It was a huge honor, the pinnacle of my career so far. The article included a gala event celebrating the reopening of the theater, an event attended by the mayor and some of the most influential people in the city. There was a picture of me standing on the stage accepting an award for the project. Final update. It's been a little over a year since that Sunday dinner. My life has moved on in ways I never could have imagined. My company has grown, and the success of the theater project has opened doors I never knew existed. I sold my old house and bought a beautiful loft downtown, a place that is entirely me. All clean lines, exposed brick, and industrial steel. I started dating again about 6 months ago. Her name is Sarah. She's a doctor. She's kind. She's brilliant, and she has a backbone of steel. Her family is wonderful, a loud, loving Italian clan who welcomed me with open arms and too much pasta. Her past is her past, and my past is mine. We are building a future together. A future based on mutual respect and clear, honest boundaries. I hadn't seen or spoken to Clara Ara in over a year. I had blocked her and her entire family on everything. But I heard things through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances. Her parents had been forced to sell their large house and downsize to a condo. The financial hit from the wedding, combined with some of her father's other creative financial ventures going south, had crippled them. Clara was still living with them. She had tried to launch a career as a life coach, but without my money to fund the website and the marketing, it had failed to launch. She was working part-time at a high-end boutique, a job she apparently hated. Leo was completely out of the picture. He had gotten engaged to another woman, and he and his new fiancée had made it very clear that Clara was not a part of their modern, fluid family. The final unexpected encounter happened last month. I was at a charity auction with Sarah. We were bidding on a piece of art, laughing and having a good time. I looked across the crowded room and I saw her. She was there as a volunteer, one of the people in black aprons serving champagne and clearing plates. She saw me. She saw me with Sarah, a beautiful, successful woman laughing at my side. She saw me looking happy, relaxed, and completely, utterly indifferent to her existence. Her face, for just a fraction of a second, crumpled. The mask of bored resentment she was wearing slipped, and I saw a flash of pure, unadulterated regret. She turned and disappeared into the kitchen before I could even register the moment completely.